Hi, good morning or afternoon, wherever you are, to everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm actually speaking to you from Europe at the moment, so hopefully there won't be too much of a delay. And due to that, Adriana is actually going to drive the slides for us today. Thank you very much for the introduction. So yes, my name is Hampson. I'm a Senior Product Manager with Cable and Wireless Business, formerly with Columbus Business Solutions prior to their acquisition by Cable and Wireless. I am ordinarily based out of Barbados, but as I said today, I'm coming to you from Europe. The purpose of today's presentation is not to talk about speculative future technologies. Everything I'm going to discuss, everything I'm going to cover is very much mainstream technology today. It is available. Many of these services and solutions we either supply ourselves or work with partners to provide, and we have either installed them or have seen them installed in hotels across Europe, across North America, and increasingly in the Caribbean region. So we're going to jump a couple of slides. I think we've had the introduction for me, who I am, where I work. So Adriana, if you could go to slide 3, please. Next one. Thank you. Oh, can you still hear me? Sorry, little technical glitch.
Yes, I can.
My computer is just powered down. But yes, will I get that to reconnect? So first of all, I'm going to talk about some of the technologies that are increasingly being seen, both in hotel rooms, in the back of house area, increasingly managing the infrastructure for hotels, and also the kind of technologies that consumers themselves are using. But there's a number of trends that are going on across the industry. Many of these you'll probably be familiar with. It's very true that increasingly we all, and by we all I also mean your customers, are using personal devices. We're also increasingly using the internet to make purchasing decisions. And very much a major trend is the increased reliance on recommendations, both from friends but also from complete strangers through websites such as TripAdvisor. And something that many people report now is preferring to use these kind of recommendation sites to make their buying decisions. But you also see increasingly those sites being integrated into third-party booking systems, into mobile booking systems, and that kind of immediacy of seeing the recommendation and being able to book straight away is driving a lot of the decision making and a lot of the booking cycles. Also, you're seeing, particularly in younger consumers, a genuine interest in environmental issues, and they're looking for hotels that could also facilitate that. They're looking for hotels that are using technology, but also making decisions, making purchasing decisions, making supplier decisions based on their environmental friendliness. I mentioned before the increasing use of personal devices. One of the big impacts of doing that is the requirement for Wi-Fi. That you'll see there as being one of the major decision makers for customers to choose a hotel is Wi-Fi. We also see it as one of the main areas that customers complain about when they've experienced or they've had their holidays. Wi-Fi, if it's not felt to be providing adequate connectivity for the devices they're bringing with them, is often something that is complained about by customers. You'll also see, we're all aware, the rise of the peer-to-peer holiday type services, so where people are offering rooms or offering holiday lets directly to consumers, so not going through the traditional booking engines, the traditional advertising and marketing channels that hotels have done. Airbnb there have got a significant number of sites, hundreds of thousands now of properties available across 34,000 cities. So you'll see lots of these trends driving decision making in the purchasing of holidays. And the decision to invest in technology to enable or to support these drivers has genuine real-time return on investment. You'll see there a 10% increase in a hotel's online reputation score leads to a 9% increase in the price they can charge for a hotel room, which leads to, in turn, increased occupancy and significantly increased revenue. So these trends are driving decisions. The ability to meet these trends, and particularly with the use of technology to meet these trends, has a real return on your investment. So if we jump to the next slide, please. So saying that guest experience, the technology really permeates our life, personal devices. For some travelers, they're looking to escape these devices, but many expect the same level of convenience, the same levels of connectivity, access to the same kind of information and services as when they're at home. So hotel operators really need to be aware of this and provide the level of infrastructure which supports what the guest wants. So if they want to connect their mobile devices, they want to connect their tablets, they want to connect their laptops, you need to have Wi-Fi in the rooms, in the public areas, even out by the pool. However, if they want to unplug, then you need to respect that and not be pushing the technology into their face. And you'll see, we'll cover many of these in the slides coming up, mobile applications, smart TVs, other infrastructure, all connected back to the kind of operation systems, the property management system, the central reservation systems. And they are able to deliver services seamlessly so that the customer sometimes isn't even aware that they're there, so that if they want to take part and use them, they're free to do so. If they don't, if they want to unplug, then they don't, as I said, they're not pushed into their faces. Next slide, please. So core to delivering a smart hotel is the connectivity, and you'll see there the connectivity to the TV, to the telephone network, into the internet, driving through to the hotel property itself. Then you begin to layer the services on top. Unified communications and contact center suite to provide the telephony, but also to provide real-time messaging, video conferencing, enabling your check-in staff to take reservations and take bookings. Increasingly, you'll see infrastructure moving up into the cloud, and often also with disaster recovery as a service, which was a topic of one of our earlier webinars. You'll see video on-demand type services, the property management system, maybe even moving that into the cloud, and then integrating that into the telephones, into television, to the Wi-Fi systems, also into sensors and controls embedded across the hotel infrastructure, into in-room automation and control pads, into smart televisions, into computers, the lobby, at the reception, in the business area, into surveillance cameras across the property, even into point-of-sale systems, and into mobile devices. Those the mobile devices being carried by the management staff, but there may also be the guest zone management devices. And all of those can be hooked into these back-end systems. So you see there an entire ecosystem being built up from the individual components, all very much reliant on that connectivity, going into the hotel and then across the hotel, but allowing you to operate many different services. And we'll begin to drill into some of these in detail. So if we jump to the next slide, please. So you see here, connectivity, really the most important aspect. And for most hotels, obviously for certain hotels in more remote locations, but for most hotels, you really need fiber connectivity, providing internet and potentially a wide area network if you've got multiple properties or you're connecting back to a head office. And there's a number of new technologies coming through, particularly something called gigabit passive optical networking, or GPON, which many networks are beginning to deploy now, which allows very affordable bandwidth. It's much cheaper than previous fiber services. If you need real high performance, then something called DWM is also increasingly being deployed, and you'll see so certainly cable and wireless are replacing all of their core network now with DWDM, allowing us to provide services up to 100 gigabits per second. So that is significant bandwidth. Also, you get options around wireless, 4G, point-to-point wireless connections, or even using satellite, often used as a backup service. So should the fiber be cut for whatever reason, you then have that level of backup. As you bring the connectivity into the property, you start looking at structured cabling. The general recommendation is Category 6, Cat 6 Ethernet cabling as a minimum. For more dispersed sites, particularly where you've got multiple properties across a large area of land, increasingly you're seeing fiber being run between those properties, providing network connections across. And that's enabling voice services, enabling data services, even enabling the delivery of the television and monitoring services all over a single converged cabling. The beauty of putting this in, it's an obvious upfront cost, but it allows you far more scalability, allows you to take advantage of a lot of these new technologies, and it's really future-proofing your property. However, we know that many, particularly older properties, this is either prohibitively expensive, or particularly if it's a protected property in some way, a historically important property, it might not even be possible. So you have Wi-Fi as an option there. The latest protocol, 802.11ac, allows significantly more devices to be connected at much higher speeds. It's not going to be as good as having proper cabling in place, and you're also always going to have problems with disruption because of walls and other electrical systems causing interference. But it's still a real option now as the new protocols come through and the new Wi-Fi services, and we're going to talk a bit more about Wi-Fi later on, allow you to drive high-performance data. And where there might be legacy cabling, you can often utilize that. So you'll see there some pictures of some new switches on the far left corner there, allowing you to use existing twisted copper pairs or coaxial cabling and still deliver these IP services. An important area to consider as well is quality of service, both across the connectivity between different properties and within the property. You can prioritize traffic of different types. So if you're using voice services, you're connecting your telephones over the same cabling, you can prioritize that. You can prioritize video conferencing. You can prioritize the delivery of TV services over basic web browsing, email, basic data services. So all things to be considered, and increasingly you're seeing the outsourcing of the management of that, the management of the routers, the management of the switches, the allocation of IP addressing, and even the support of those services being connected to service providers such as ourselves, and allowing your own in-house IT to really concentrate on higher profile areas like developing your web commerce strategy, delivering new applications, delivering new technology. So jump to the next slide, please. So the next really important area I'm going to talk about is television, hospitality, video services. And we've seen a number of emerging technologies coming through, becoming mainstream on the consumer side, which also have an impact within the hospitality industry. So one of the really important ones is the emergence of smart TVs and the ability to connect cabling directly into the back. So if you've delivered or put structured cabling into your property, the ability to put that cable, the Ethernet cable, straight into the back of the TV and deliver IP television straight to TV. And that allows you to do more customized content. It allows you to do personalized electronic program guides, which are branded to your hotel. It allows you to personalize the interface. Allows you to drive more interactive services for the consumer, particularly when you want to integrate things like room automation, such as the air conditioning, the electric blinds and the curtains, being able to control those from the TV, being able to link your telephone system in so that when a telephone call comes, it pops up on the television, being able to integrate door intercom services so that when room service rings, it flashes up on the TV and you can see the video outside of who's outside the room. All of these are available through some fairly basic applications as long as you have the cabling and the right TVs in there. So this is really increasingly becoming mainstream. Also, you'll see a lot of content now moving to HD, but beyond that, there's the next generation 4K, which is 4 times as many pixels as HD. And the first mainstream TVs at an affordable price that can support 4K content are coming through. Increasingly, broadcasters are starting to experiment with this content. The challenge for broadcasters is 4 times as many pixels means 4 times as much bandwidth needed to deliver the services. However, with the right connectivity, as we move to those high bandwidth fiber-delivered services and we move to an all-IP infrastructure, then that becomes much easier to deliver that content. And I mentioned before the ability to prioritize this traffic over other forms of traffic across your internal cabling. Also, you're beginning to see video-on-demand services, both proprietary services by service providers and also over-the-top services such as Netflix and Apple TV. Again, increasingly you're able to integrate these into the televisions so that it can all be controlled from a single interface, and that can be hooked back into the property management system. So if you want to offer premium paid-for content that appears on a customer's bill, it's a much more seamless service. And even some of the screen technologies coming through, much smaller bezels, much higher resolution, curved TVs, so the likes of Samsung and LG increasingly offer curved TVs, which offers a much more interactive experience for the viewer, plus the ability to deliver services to mobile devices such as tablets, so that you can watch content from different rooms or when you're at the pool. And again, if you're offering premium content, the ability to charge that back through the property management system. Also the ability to offer more integrated controls, so ability to use smartphones and tablet devices to browse content, to change channels, to look at the program guides, and to see what's going on. So we'll jump to the next slide, please. So most hotel rooms have telephones. We're pretty familiar with the concept of PBX, connecting the in-room telephones and the front of office, front of house telephones. However, it's very much evolving into what we call unified communications, integrating not just voice, but video, text, messaging, voice into a seamless experience so that you can communicate through any medium that you choose. And the latest services, the latest systems allow you to integrate into the TVs, as we mentioned before, but also allowing them to integrate with guests' own mobile devices so that the room might have an extension, an external telephone number. When the guest is there, that automatically syncs with their mobile phone, their smartphone, and if they're out on an excursion or they're down at the pool and somebody calls their room, then that will come direct to their mobile device. The phones themselves are becoming far more interactive and far more powerful. Large touchscreen displays, color displays, ability again to personalize those interfaces to allow them to order in-room services such as food, browse menus, select food from those menus, order them directly from room service, ability to order spa services, excursions and premium paid for options, again hooked into the property management system, so those appear on the bill. We mentioned room automation before, so these phones particularly, you can control the air conditioning, you can open and close the blinds. Again, if room service appears at the door, then it will come up on the screen and they'll be able to see the video camera outside over to see who's at the door and even remotely open the door. Some of the licensing models are also moving towards more of a room utilization basis, so allowing you to really tie the cost of the phone system to your occupancy levels, so it's more closely tied to your cash flow. I mentioned before the use of cloud centers for taking reservations. Increasingly, that technology is moving up into the cloud, allowing much more flexibility so that you can take on extra stuff at peak times, reduce those down, manage your costs, again tying costs to cash flow, and of course integration into the property management systems. And increasingly, they're no longer the large clunky boxes that look like air conditioning units. They can be installed on servers. Those servers don't necessarily now have to be on your property. They can be in a data center or even delivered from a service provider's own network. So much more flexibility on the types of hardware, the types of deployments, where they go. It makes installation much quicker, much easier, allows maintenance to be moved away from your own direct staff or on-call staff, and so they can be managed remotely. And it reduces the physical requirements on the cabling, on the physical space, on the power utilization. So it's a much more cost-effective approach often to move those into a third-party data center or move it all together into the cloud. So it's very much how the phone systems are evolving, becoming far more integrated into the guest experience and allowing upselling of different services. And this is what we said before about it being a seamless experience. If the guest wants to use a phone as a phone, it works as a phone. If they want to use their own mobile device, if they want to start using the room automation features, then it becomes far more interactive and more involved, enhancing that guest experience. Next slide, please. We said very much at the beginning the guests, as we ourselves do, are using mobile devices, mobile applications. Most guests will bring at least one of these. Many guests will bring multiple devices, and increasingly these types of devices are becoming ever more personal. You'll see there some smartwatches. Many of the mainstream brands, including Apple, have launched their own smart devices or smartwatch devices. There's a lot of talk about wearable technology. Google obviously experimented with a Google Glass, although they never actually went mainstream. But far more of these devices are becoming worn, they're becoming much more personal, and people use them every single day. The applications that are available for the hospitality industry are fairly broad, and these can be used to book services, they can be used to enhance the experience, they can be used to gather feedback and promote loyalty. So many sites are experimenting with mobile booking. I mentioned before that real-time booking experience of being able to look at a recommendation and then being able to see pricing, compare pricing, and make that booking straight away. Mobile commerce is becoming a significant growth area for many retailers and increasingly in the hospitality industry. The idea of a mobile concierge, a device that helps you through the arrivals process, welcomes you to the hotel, explains where things are, makes the whole experience seamless and easier by providing key information when it's needed as the guest moves through the whole booking and stay experience. You'll see mobile check-in services and increasingly mobile keys. Many smartphones now contain what's called near-field connectivity. So when you swipe them, they can communicate with other devices over technologies such as Bluetooth and short-distance radio, so that they can be used instead of the swipe cards, the key cards. Mobile payments and coupons. Apple has launched their mobile pay, their Apple Pay. Google has its Google Wallet. Samsung and some of the other big technology providers are also beginning to introduce these services. The ability to swipe a phone and it connect back to a bank account and deduct money from your bank, particularly in point-of-sale situations. Also, the ability to push special offers over Wi-Fi, over the mobile network, based to test possibly on a guest's location. So should they come close to the shop, you can push offers to them. Should they be near the health spa, push offers around the spa system. The ability to geolocate customers on the Wi-Fi network and tie that back in so that you can enhance the experience of the guests as they move around the property. The ability to integrate with a unified communication service, that we mentioned before, so that the room extension routes calls to the mobile device, or they can use them for video conferencing, or they can communicate direct with front desk or room service with just a simple push of a mobile button using the device that they're familiar with, rather than having to learn a new telephone or go looking for somebody. The ability to integrate with the pay TV services to push content, browse content, choose programming, pull content down from video on demand services, or charge back through the property management system. Increasingly as well, mobile devices are being used by the management staff. Point-of-sale terminals are increasingly moving towards the use of tablet devices. They're much cheaper than PCs, much easier to move around. Waiting staff, bar staff, shop staff, retail staff can have these devices, can take orders, can communicate straight back, can take mobile payments, can take payments from credit cards. So it becomes a far more immediate, far more personal experience when you're purchasing services, purchasing goods, purchasing drinks, purchasing food through the hotel. Also, the use of mobile marketing and analytics, as I said before, geolocation, pushing special offers, pushing coupons, pushing redeemable coupons through the purchasing system that they can then redeem when they're on the property, and also using them for real-time management and reporting and control of hotel infrastructure, the ability to track occupancy levels in real time, to see problems as they arise, either from other staff or being able to monitor and track the infrastructure itself, and we'll talk a bit more about that later on. So mobile devices have a huge range of uses and are really driving a lot of this technology adoption and technology change in the hospitality space. So next slide, please. So we mentioned before about Wi-Fi, and particularly when we're talking about mobile devices, Wi-Fi is important. You have to have Wi-Fi infrastructure that's fit for purpose. You really have to have the infrastructure that can manage this huge range of different devices, that can manage the peaks and troughs of connectivity. Some of the problems that many Wi-Fi deployments experience: spotty coverage, black spots, areas where you can't gain or can't connect. You really need Wi-Fi infrastructure with high-gain smart antenna systems. They mean that you can put far fewer access points in. Obviously, makes it much more cost-effective. Antenna technology particularly is driving a lot of the advancements in Wi-Fi infrastructure. Guest networking. The ability to basically troubleshoot problems, allow customers to connect, and solve any issues that might come up. So the tools that sit behind the Wi-Fi, allowing you to troubleshoot those problems, identify issues, track when customers are connecting and seeing where they might be experiencing problems. Consistent wireless high-speed internet access. So you really want to set the infrastructure with these adaptive antennae, smart antennae arrays, allowing stable connection, allowing plenty of staff or plenty of users to connect at the same time, allowing technology of different types to connect, allowing those devices to roam around across the Wi-Fi network without dropping out, allowing converged services. So we mentioned before about the ability to deliver video, TV, data, IP camera monitoring, connection to point-of-sale systems, connection to sensors and to room automation systems. All of these can be connected over Wi-Fi. So you need the infrastructure that can manage multiple connected devices that can provide both public Wi-Fi access for guests, but also private Wi-Fi access for these management services and for operations staff to connect. Allowing complex deployments. Many properties are not built with wireless propagation in mind. They have lots of walls, they tend to have vegetation and other electrical systems, and these can cause interference. So you need technology which allows you to be installed with the fewest number of access points, yet still deliver the quality of service that's required, particularly delivering services where you can't put cabling in. So things like meshing, the ability for access points to wirelessly connect to each other rather than having to run wiring between the access points. Voice over Wi-Fi, the ability to connect your telephone systems over the Wi-Fi without any degradation of service. The ability to deliver IPTV over Wi-Fi. So we said before, adoption of 802.11ac, which is the latest wireless standard. So looking for wireless infrastructure that supports that standard. And there's a quote there from a major hotel operator just reinforcing how important the proper Wi-Fi solution is to delivering these services today. Next slide, please. So this isn't all just about guest experience. It's also about being able to manage your hotel infrastructure. One of the great advantages of Wi-Fi and the internet protocols is that it's allowed standardization, miniaturization of remote sensors and controllers, and these are available for a fairly low cost per unit now. And this can be embedded right across the hotel, controlling things like pumps, controlling your heating, your ventilation, your air conditioning systems, controlling your lights, controlling curtains and blinds and allowing in-room automation, controlling your electrical and water systems, controlling your swimming pools, your irrigation systems, your drainage, allowing remote access control, cameras and alarms, even monitoring equipment within your kitchens and monitoring smoke alarms, fire alarms. These can be managed through interfaces that allow you to see real-time issues, allow you to see trends, allow you to fine-tune your hotel, allow you to reduce energy cost, water usage, allow an enhanced guest experience, and allow greater management of costs. So you'll see there remote locking, monitoring of lifts, smart thermostats in rooms, smart lighting controls, motion detectors, making sure that lights go out when nobody's around, and being able to manage those by computers but also mobile devices, as we talked about earlier, being able to provide your management staff with smartphones or tablet devices so in real time they can see what's going on in the hotel, and then being able to hook in surveillance and alarm systems, being able to triangulate users by their mobile devices and allowing them to access panic alarms or raise emergencies and being able to locate exactly where that is and being able to then hook that directly into the emergency services and your own security staff. So there's a lot, and this is about really making your hotel smart. It's about managing your energy usage and costs, your water, enhancing the guest experience, making the hotel safer, making things easier for your operational staff, and so being able to really fine-tune your hotel. Next slide, please. Moving your infrastructure to the cloud, your servers, your data storage, your telephone systems, your network security, things like your firewalls, intrusion prevention, even your desktop operating systems, being able to move key applications like your customer relationship management, your property management system, your booking system, your point of sale and back office and finance systems, your email, your office applications, putting your data there, data collection, data storage, data protection, enabling proper data access rules, replicating that data, introducing disaster recovery so that should your infrastructure answer a problem, it's always backed up. And then being able to drive analytics, correlating that data, interrogating it, understanding it, interpreting it, getting output that allows you to do a lot of things. We're going to talk about that on a later slide in a few minutes. Real advantages of moving to the cloud are that many of these service providers have already made significant investments in data centers. They've bought the servers and the storage infrastructure. They've got lots of trained engineers. They have the support staff there 24/7, 365 days a year. This computing infrastructure, storage infrastructure is highly scalable. Typically, service providers will spend a lot of money up front to build infrastructure that can meet customers' demands. It's generally highly resilient and highly redundant. It also allows greater availability. You're integrating with connectivity. You might have connectivity to multiple service providers. Often that will all be purchased as a single service. So you're getting all of the computing, all of the storage, all of the bandwidth, and all of the security that you need for now and the future. It allows you to deploy services quickly because the infrastructure is already there. You can load applications quickly. You can try things out with reduced risk without having to buy hardware up front. And as I said, you can take advantage of analytics by combining and correlating your data. Many people fear the cloud. They fear that they're losing control. They fear that they're giving their data to somebody that they might not be able to trust. But the reality is that most data breaches do not happen at third-party data centers. They happen with customers' own infrastructure. And typically that's because many businesses, they don't have the resource and they don't necessarily have all the in-house skills needed to build the resilient, robust infrastructure and protect it adequately. So you really need to understand the kind of advantages the cloud infrastructure can bring. And there's many different types of cloud. Cloud doesn't necessarily have to be somewhere where you don't know. It can be within your own property or within your own data center facility, but just getting somebody else to install and run the infrastructure. And then being able to integrate with things like disaster recovery as a service so you back up off-site seamlessly. Okay, next slide, please. So we've talked about some of the technology trends. We also touched very briefly there on analytics. I'm actually going to talk about that in a little bit more detail now. Your guests, your staff, your own hotel is generating huge amounts of data. That data might not necessarily be being collected. It might not necessarily be analyzed today, but that data is being generated nonetheless. So we're going to talk a bit about what that data is, where it's coming from, and what you can do with it. Basically, the insights that this data can provide to help you manage costs and maximize revenues. And I know that there's going to be a lot of this, a lot about this in other events at Chief, but we'll touch on it very briefly now. As I said, we've looked at a lot of the smart hotel technologies. We are very much entering the age of the smart hotel. where automation, monitoring, and management applications combined with data analytics enable the operator to understand and control and fine-tune every element of the property and really enhance the guest experience. So jump to the next slide, please. So what is this data? It's the obvious. Data from loyalty schemes, your reservations data, the room inventory, so what rooms you have available, the revenues you're making, your yield, the value-added services that you provide, your complementary and chargeable services, the consumables, the amount of stock you have, where that stock's being delivered, when that stock's being delivered, your staffing and costs. But there's also less obvious that you should be considering weather forecasts, very obvious one, both locally, but also the source markets where your guests are coming from. Bad weather abroad frequently will lead to increased bookings for your property. Looking at your energy, water usage, looking at the usage of your infrastructure, how many people go through doors, how many people are using the elevators, how often kitchen equipment is being used, how often alarm systems are being triggered, how often your entertainment systems are being used, the TVs, the internet, in-room music systems, you have that. As I said, guest and staff movement around the property. All of these are really useful and important items of data. So jump to the next slide. Where does this data come from? It might be from your customer relationship management system. It might be from your booking system, property management system, your point of sale and your finance systems. It might come from internet sources, so mentioned before about weather forecasts. It might come directly from your internet systems, what programming people are watching, when do they watch it, how do they watch it, what kind of devices if you're offering the ability to stream to mobile devices. Infrastructure monitoring coming from your elevators, your pools, your kitchens, your heating, your ventilation, your air conditioning systems, your access control systems like the door locks, alarms, cameras, etc. All of these are potential sources of data. All of the technology we talked about earlier can all drive data. So next slide, please. What can you do with it? You can correlate it. So looking at whether your local weather versus when people use certain elements of your infrastructure. Looking at the time of day when guests are eating, and what does that mean for your energy usage? It's an obvious one there. It also allows you to begin to do demand planning, so understanding when infrastructure is going to be used, understanding when your peaks and troughs in your guest bookings and guest stays are, allowing you to tie value-added services, excursions, spa services, allowing you to plan and track for your consumables, your staffing levels, allowing you to do real-time pricing adjustments, balancing supply and demand so you're getting the best price for your rooms at all times, allowing you to control the infrastructure so that it's available, allowing you to plan maintenance, plan replacement, understanding when equipment becomes worn out, allowing you to manage and conserve energy and water, allowing you to enhance the guest experience, making sure that services are going to be ready when guests want to use them, making sure that you've got the most rooms available when guests want to stay, making sure that you've got enough staff available when guests are staying. Also, security, protecting your guests' data, a really important one there. It's not just your own internal data, but also your guest data that needs protecting when they're using those mobile devices, when they're making phone calls, when they're doing video conferencing, when they're ordering things, if they're using mobile point-of-sale systems, protecting the credit card data, protecting their names and addresses. Also ensuring your guests' physical safety. We talked before about the ability to triangulate and track guest movements and being able to make sure that you're protecting them with the CCTV cameras, alarm systems, access control. So all of that feeds into the cycle: booking, check-in, stay, check-out, feedback. So really making both your hotel smart your guest smart, and the guest stay smart. So last slide. So what do you need? We've touched on most of these already. You need the connectivity and networking to the internet and between and across your properties. You need the computing and storage, a primary environment and a backup environment with all of the firewalls and protection around that, and not just protecting the infrastructure, but protecting the applications and data, so having application-aware security for your web servers, your email servers, your databases. Having the right applications and devices, having monitoring sensors and control units that we've talked about already, also the network and physical security, and having all the management and support tools, both internal and for your guest-facing, looking at introducing managed services if necessary to lighten the load on your own internal IT staff, or outsourcing for specific areas where you might not necessarily have the skill sets within your own staffing. So that brings an end to my presentation. I think we've got a few minutes left for questions if there are any. So, as briefly mentioned, that's my details.
Thank you, Alex. We do have a few questions, but we don't have a lot of time. Any of the questions that are submitted, if Alex doesn't have time to get to them right now during the Q&A, please go ahead and email him at that email that's showing on screen right now, and I'm sure he'll be happy to help everyone out. One of the first questions asked is, particularly from the standpoint of a small hotel, how much of an investment would it be to look at making your hotel technologically smarter, and what would be the true ROI of doing so?
Okay, that's a very good question. It's typically suggested that most businesses should spend, on average, about 3% of their revenue on IT. And when you look at the hospitality sector, it's typically been quite a bit below that. In fact, the average we've seen from research done out of Switzerland about 18 months ago suggested globally it's only about 1.8% in the hospitality sector. So you really need to look at what your overall investment is and where that investment is going. And within that, we include things like telephone bills, the connectivity. You know, are you getting the best value for money there? Are you spending that money effectively? And I mentioned before, looking at things like managed services, moving infrastructure into the cloud, moving towards more of an OPEX-based model, so tying your investment more closely to cash flow rather than having to buy infrastructure up front. We talk quite a lot about the importance of cabling as an investment for the future. Typically, when you talk to service providers signing longer-term contracts, they will often begin to roll these kind of investments up into their overall contracts to you. So there are definitely ways to structure your spending so that you take advantage of that. The return on the investment, we talked about that right at the beginning. Research shows that a 10% improvement in your feedback scores leads to a 14% increase in revenue. So, and that investment in technology is clearly seen as important by guests. So I think the return on investment there is pretty clear. And it said, you know, you should be looking at spending around 3% of your annual revenues on your IT technology. And there are ways to tie those investments more closely into your cash flow. I mentioned before the kind of cash model, the modeling where it's more tied to room occupancy. One of the services, for instance, that we offer is the ability to upgrade your bandwidth through peak season and decrease it off season. So there are many ways in which you can make those investments happen much more smartly. Also, some of these are investments that once made will pay back over years. Others are, of course, much more consumable. Also, looking at how you take advantage of guests' own devices, the technologies they're bringing. So investing more smartly. I hope that answers that. But I can always go into more detail offline if needs be.
An article in Forbes recently brought up the matter of now guests, when they travel, they BYOE, they bring their own entertainment with them, with their smartphones and cell phones and laptops. So would you say that possibly, given that, the impact of BYOE, would you say that the tech upgrade, that is probably the tech upgrade that is most impactful when it comes to guest satisfaction? Or what would you feel as far as all of these upgrades, which one impacts their level of satisfaction the most?
Wi-Fi, without a shadow of a doubt, Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi. Okay.
I mean, that is the enabler for bring your own entertainment. Really buying cheap access points is a false economy. Spend the most amount of money you can on your Wi-Fi infrastructure, and it will reap dividends.
Okay. And the final question, because we're going to run out of time, is regarding data. I think a lot of our hoteliers and just all of us in general are drowning in so much data. We have so much information thrown at us all day long. And the important thing is being able to understand that data and actually have applicable uses for that data. One of the things that has been said with regard to big data is that it has various collecting points. Data is filtered through many different applications within a property, and connecting them is the most complex thing. How can our hoteliers go about making that connection a little bit more seamless so that then they can actually utilize the data that they're collecting?
So certainly the whole concept of big data is a big one. It's interesting, some of the comments I've seen recently are, how can we get big data to work when we don't even understand little data? And I think, you don't need to make significant investments in infrastructure to begin to collect and analyze this data. And we talked before about cloud allowing you to really scale up. On our network, we actually see the utilization doubling every year. So we double the bandwidth across our entire network every single year. We also see on our own cloud infrastructure the amount of storage customers are demanding increasing at about 60% a year. So yes, you're right. We are all drowning in data. Basically, looking at how you can store that effectively, that's a really important one. Looking at what data you need to store, how long you need to store it, and planning ahead how much storage you need, and that will always grow. But there's a lot of advancements in the underlying technology within storage, which is bringing the cost down. We're moving increasingly to solid-state disks, allowing much more rapid access, much higher levels of density of data storage per physical measurement of space. And then you're looking at much smarter applications being able to be delivered over that can begin to collect, correlate, and integrate that data. And many of these applications are not expensive. Many of them are built on open source. So once you've got your infrastructure sorted, the ability to run those applications and work with partners who can help you make sense of that becomes far easier. So I think once you've got your infrastructure sorted, things become much easier. It's much harder if you're always having to run behind, if you keep having to go back to spend more money on more storage when it's not planned within your IT budget. So plan your data, really build some robust policies around what you want to collect, how long you want to store it for, and the destruction of that data, and have adequate backup and recovery and archiving of that data in place. And then you can begin to look at how you make sense of that data, looking at the kind of applications and database type solutions that can help you make sense of that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex, for taking the time, especially on from such a long distance. Thank you for making the time to come and participate in this webinar. You can ask Alex any questions you like just by sending him a quick email to that email that you see on your screen. Or, even better, you can join us at Chief and come to the How Smart Is Your Hotel session and ask him in person. I'm sure he'd love to meet you. So thank you once again for joining us. And everybody have a wonderful day. All of this information, the video as well as the PowerPoint presentation, will be made available within 48 hours on our website, and it will be emailed to you as well. Alex, any final words?
No, just to say yes, I'm definitely going to be there, and looking forward to meeting you in Puerto Rico.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.